I'm looking to do, basically below 20. At 19, I put 1/6 of what I want to own as a HODL position in Bitcoin into a portfolio, right? And basically every 2 to 3,000 down, I'm going to add another 1/6. So I'll have 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6 of a position, and then finally a full position at 6/6 if it gets below 10,000. There's no denying that this looks like a bearish channel again. So I do still think there could be a little bit of upside. I'm surprised, honestly, that Bitcoin hasn't shown more strength. And the reason why, you might say, well, why does Bitcoin need to show strength? Well, it doesn't need to. But the bottom line is, when you have a stock market rallying, it's telling you that there's risk on. And generally, Bitcoin, 2 times does that risk minimum, maybe 3 times. So if like the NASDAQ goes up 2%, oftentimes you'll see Bitcoin up 4 or 6 or 8%. You haven't seen that here. And that has to be something that you pay attention to, because I think what's going on here is that, so Bitcoin has floated up, but you're not seeing the same bang for your buck as the technology stocks because of Voyager, Celsius. I mean, there's definitely this fear amongst average investors that got burned, that their money got locked up in some of these fiascos. And so I think you're seeing less interest as a risk asset of going back in. Now, again, I think it's important to recognize that the longer term pattern here is bearish. I do still think we could go test one more time the high here, get up to about 25,500. But I have to be honest, I still have a downside ultimate target of 12 to 13,000 on Bitcoin. So I do think there's another leg lower. You can almost see the writing on the wall now, because if let's just say the NASDAQ starts to really tank again, and it's already we're seeing the NASDAQ's like 20% off of its lows, or 15%. So, I mean, imagine the NASDAQ just drops 20% back to its recent lows. You can't tell me that Bitcoin's not going to at least break the low here and head lower. And really, if you're talking, the low I think was 17,600 or whatever it was. I mean, really at that point, you're not that far away from 12 to 13,000. So I do think you have more downside, unfortunately. I love Bitcoin long term. I think it's exactly what the world needs, but it has to get this flush out. You haven't seen enough retail investors get freaked out to the point where they actually start talking about it not being worthless, like we saw in 2018 before the 2019-20 started to move up and 21 run up. So I think that also has to happen. And I still think you have to make a lot of these other coins go to zero. Not necessarily the top 20, 30 coins, but there's so many junk coins out there. If you look at the .com era, there was a major flush out and the best survived. And that's actually the healthiest thing for it to happen. So I think, again, on a technical basis, I've calculated it out. 12, 13,000 will be an interesting target. I'm hopeful that's the low. I'm going to start accumulating as we get below here, back into the teens for a longer term kind of HODL position.
So basically, we've got relative weakness when you look at how much Bitcoin has come up compared to things like other risk-on assets, and we don't have that much support right here at that 19,000-20,000. So if we do experience some more risk-off behavior in the markets, it's likely to push Bitcoin below that support line, which would then drop very quickly down to where it's got a lot more support down that $12,000, $13,000 area. Exactly. And we might see a large accumulation phase from there. Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. You can see, by the way, this is the NASDAQ 100, but look at how vertical this channel is. And by the way, look at this trend line here. And look at this upsloping, and basically price is there. What that tells me, by the way, is that tomorrow we have the jobs number, and it wouldn't shock me to see a drop in the NASDAQ based on the fact that we're hitting such good resistance here. But the bottom line is, if you start to see the NASDAQ rolling over, at some point this channel gets taken out, and then you got to think Bitcoin's channel gets taken out. And again, Bitcoin's channel, look at how flat it is comparatively. I mean, it is just so flat in terms of a bearish consolidation pattern. So I do think that's exactly it. The next kind of risk off period takes Bitcoin down to that 12 to 13,000 level. And again, I think that's where you have a chance at making a bottom. There's a small chance that, I kind of do the comparison where I look at the Amazon chart from 2000, because I kind of say, hey, look at Amazon today. That's where I envision Bitcoin being like the biggest player on the block. So what did it do? What did Amazon as a .com do when the .coms collapsed? And Amazon actually dropped about 95%. So that's my real worst case scenario. I think my goalpost right now, my kind of common sense target is 12 to 13,000. But I do want people to be aware that there's always a chance that you could see that 95% drop, which takes us back to about 3,500 on Bitcoin. Now, again, Amazon at that point was, if you took away the split, it was about a $6 stock, and then it went to like 3,500. So again, then map it out where Bitcoin could go later on, and that's why I'm so long-term bullish on it. But it certainly is. I mean, this is unprecedented in terms of Bitcoin's history with everything going on. The Fed, Bitcoin's never experienced a tightening phase like this, inflation this high. It's only been around since 2009.
So for the average trader who thinks, hey, there's a good chance of this happening, that I would like to try and trade around it, but I'm scared that I might miss out and this actually could be the bottom, would a viable strategy be to keep, let's say, cut down to 70% or so, cut down a portion of your holdings and trade it down, and then as it gets to those lower levels, rebuild back up, kind of trade around a core position?
Yeah, I mean, so this is where it gets really tricky, right? Is that as much as I think it's going to 12 or 13, at this point, if you've ridden it down from 65 or 69, the question is it worth dumping some of that position and trying to buy lower? It's hard for me to give advice on that because it's such a tricky thing. I wouldn't want it to hit 15,000 and then start its next bull run and then people miss out on it. What I like to do is basically I would just say, if you're still in it and you've ridden it down, I don't know if I'd take the risk of exiting if at these levels. I mean, even, if you think about from 69 to 22 where it is, that amount of drop. I mean, if I'm saying it's going to go to 12, it's only another $10,000. It's the equivalent of from 65 going to 55. It's not that big of a move. So just so everyone knows what I'm looking to do, basically below 20, at 19, I put 1/6 of what I want to own as a HODL position in Bitcoin into a portfolio, right? And basically every 2,000 to 3,000 down, I'm going to add another 1/6. So I'll have 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6 of a position, and then finally a full position at 6/6. If it gets below 10,000, that would be my last ad right there. So I would say to people, I mean, you got to choose what you're most comfortable with. But my recommendation is at this stage, just dollar cost average at this point down. Just do it slowly so you can space out your buys. And then eventually I do believe that you see 100,000 on it, maybe 500, even 1 million down the road.